tell me about your favorite conspiracy ever. That'll be a great start.
My favorite conspiracy, if I had to pick just one, might be because they were all replaced by the conspiracy. I don't know if you've heard that one.
No, I haven't heard
I can't hold it.
that.
Hi, I'm Cole Delaney.
Hi.
I'm Shion Takeuchi.
Shion is the creator of Inside Job, a new animated show for Netflix. How are you? First of all, Shion, where are you? What's going on?
I'm great. I'm calling in from my home in Los Angeles, California, where it's a pleasantly crisp day, overcast for once.
Perfect. And the birds aren't real. Yeah.
Birds are not real, but they are singing.
Our office manages every conspiracy in the world. Can you manage to show up on time?
Reagan Ridley! You are so smart, but your people skills, woof!
Everyone remember to do time card! Time card!
A show like this is so interesting because there's so many layers of conspiracies that people may never have heard of that you can just kind of pluck and plot in and stuff like that.
The fun thing about this premise is that, you know, people will tell you about, oh, have you heard about this one? And like, honest to God, 9 times out of 10, I'm like, it's the craziest shit you've ever heard come out of their mouth.
I know that I could make the world a better place if I didn't have to deal with all of this.
The drone bro!
What the hell? Are you all high?
What was that?
Oh, God. Wake up, sheeple!
You are the showrunner of Inside Job. Tell me, how did that happen? How did that begin?
I first thought of the idea way back in early 2016, late 2015. I was always interested in conspiracy theories. In college, I used to listen to this old AM radio show that was on super late called Coast to Coast AM, where Art Bell, the host, would have on these like cryptid investigators and like paranormal academics, if you will, and all kinds of crazy guests. And I would just listen to that, and that's where my interest started. And then, I kind of wanted to combine this kind of outlandish world with some different elements of my ruminations on I guess, like power and family and what's happening in the culture. And kind of that's the stew that was created as Inside Job.
Obviously, you have to research the show, and you say a lot of people kind of come up to you and grab you and shake you and say, have you heard about this? How many watch lists do you think you've ended up on?
Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. I'm sure only the best ones. Only the best.
Yeah, of course. I think in an interview before, I might have heard you say that if a shadow government exists, then it's going to be run by people. And when you talk about that kind of stew of people that create it, like what then were the building blocks, which you have this kind of generic idea you have to narrow in and kind of pick out what the central building blocks were?
It's kind of a lot of different things that are drawn from different periods of my life and my different interests. Like the idea of someone who wants to make the world a better place, but the irony of working for a company that seems to be about preserving the status quo and maybe not such a great place was just fascinating to me, because the way power works is that frequently it accumulates around institutions that aren't always doing the best thing. So I think in a lot of media, you see like a scrappy, idealistic person try to take down the system from the outside. But what if you had a pragmatic, cynical hero that wanted to enter the system and try to change it for good from the inside? And that's kind of the dynamic that I was exploring and that I thought was interesting. And really, I think it's like a common experience that a lot of young people go through when first entering the workforce, which is you think that adults have it all figured out and you're going to go to a place where everything runs smoothly and, people coordinate perfectly and get all their stuff done on time and solve problems before they arise. And the reality is, you get gobsmacked with the fact that, like, oh my God, everything is almost always a dumpster fire until the last second when it's magically not, or it continues to be dumpster fire after the fact.
Yeah, everything's held together by string and gum behind the scenes.
Yes, so fragile. Oh my God.
Of course. Now, this is your first show where you've kind of show ran. Is that the term, show ran?
Show ran, yes.
Yeah, maybe. You can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think one of the last things you kind of had a directorial hand in was potentially your kind of undergrad film, your CalArts film, When the Time is Right.
Yeah, wow, that's a throwback. Yeah.
I saw it many years ago, and when I heard your name, I was like, oh, I think I recognize that from, and I remember the little pair. But I find it such an interesting parallel then that someone like Reagan is coming to terms with, having taking the power that she wields and running a team, and now obviously you taking the power you wield and running a team. Did that filter into the production at all? Was that a conscious thing, or do you just kind of go once in a while like, oh my God, this is the same thing?
Oh. It was really funny because, when I was developing the show alone in my apartment, jobless, I was merely a staff writer at that time. I had never been in a leadership role. And so I was kind of imagining all of these things with my limited experience. And then in an odd way, when the show got greenlit and then we started production, I found that I was living the arc of the series in real time as we were making it, which was quite mind-blowing. Reagan, the protagonist, is this woman who has lots of ideas and drive, but she lacks social niceties and some, nice people skills. And she's been going after this promotion at the expense of her health and her hygiene and her social life. And when she gets it, she learns that, leadership has to be more than just telling people what to do. Yeah. And I would say that at times it was very much like a lot of meta irony happening during the course of making this show.
Is there any kind of big examples that you can think of? I'm just going to prod you with the stick a bit more, though. I think like learning about everyone has a different leadership style. I learned that I'm not really a Brett. I'm not really like the finger guns guy that can be, constantly cracking jokes and naturally soaking in the adoration. But I also did find that, much like the show, a useful thing is to surround yourself with Bretts so that they can carry that load, and then you can just kind of feverishly work like a gremlin in the background. Obviously, we, one of the executive producers is Alex Hirsch, and you work together on Gravity Falls. Did you, let's say you talk about surrounding yourself with Bretts, how much did you draw on the kind of experience of Gravity Falls and then having him as part of the overall team? I don't know, like a Gandalf or something, if he pops in and out, or if he was there the whole time. You tell me.
Sure, yeah. Alex and I worked together on Gravity Falls, and after the show ended, we became really good friends. I actually pitched the idea to him way back when, and he was like, "Oh, that's really good. You should continue to develop this." as you know, like as uh, it's hard to make the transition from staff writer to showrunner, and so I knew that if I wanted to get it made with a partner that I trusted, that Alex and I, having had worked together already for so long, like he was my ideal choice to be executive producer on the project, because I knew that we already had a shorthand and we kind of get each other and have a similar sense of humor. So I was like trying to like whisper in his ear, like, you should come to Netflix. It's really cool, man. Oh, I hear that they're doing all kinds of awesome things, and like essentially drew him into my web at Netflix. And I'm really glad, because he's just, he's been an incredible support and incredible help during the making of the show.
I know with Gravity Falls, like Alex kind of threw this global scavenger hunt at the end of the show that kind of everyone interacted with. And I'd be really remiss to ask you, because there's so much in Inside Job. It's hard to take in. There's just so much there. Is it something you're hoping to kind of bring forward into this show, or you've already done it?
Are you asking me about like ARG scavenger hunt type like events, or Easter eggs in general?
That's a really good point, and you've turned this interview totally around. I don't know what I'm asking. You know, something like Gravity Falls has a life beyond its life. Do you know what I mean? It's because so many people are digging into it all the time and finding extra things. And, you know, something like Inside Job begs for that to happen, obviously. And is that something that you're kind of obviously doing? And how much, like, do you pull your hair out thinking about, do I need more? Or are you kind of happy with what you have there?
I mean, good ideas are good ideas. And people, like, when they connect to characters, they almost relate to them and fill in their own backstory at times in a way that's, like, to me as the creator, delightful, because it speaks to how much something resonated with someone. I recently had a conversation with the lead animators over at Janfield, who are animating the show for us, and they kind of asked me some questions, and they had a few theories about super tangential tertiary characters that they'd put together based off of like certain like character design choices. And they were like, is this like, they were like, did that person have an affair because they have the same nose as the other person? and I was like, whoa, that's awesome. I love that. That's hilarious.
You said they did have an affair, of course.
You know?
Who knows?
Who knows?
One thing that I found really interesting about the show is obviously with all these conspiracy theories, there's a lot of validation that happens because the world that you've designed validates them in a way that, like, okay, there's Bigfoot walking around, you know, Hollow Earth theory and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, there's this like facetious humor that debunks it at the same time. Like that kind of thin line to walk. Was that a conscious choice that you made from the start, or was it something that organically grew?
It definitely was part of the show from the inception, because it goes back to the idea that, you know, if human beings are behind a quote unquote shadow government, they're going to be human beings. And if I know humans, they don't have their shit together. So I could only imagine if there was a shadow government, it would be just as terrible and disorganized as the regular government. So like whether or not the show, you know, validates things like Bigfoot, like there's a line in episode 106 that kind of encapsulates, the Flat Earth episode that kind of encapsulates the show's perspective on things, which is most conspiracies aren't real, and the ones that are just capitalism. And that's kind of like the thrust of it. Like if things happened, it was because of systemic forces in capitalism, and it's always for a reason that you didn't expect, and probably really dumb.
Something that really tweaked my eye was these kind of random crayon lines in the background and stuff like that, like very interestingly drawn, sometimes a direct reflection of foreground elements. And I saw that kind of Jeffrey Thompson was the art director on that. Could you talk a bit more about that collaboration?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Jeffrey and I are also really good friends. In fact,
Yeah.
he's my roommate. So we collaborate quite closely.
Yeah.
But when we were kind of like trying to figure out the look of the world, the look and the feel of the world, I really love lots of hyper stylized animation and stuff like that. But it felt like for a show that was like kind of set in an alternate version of our reality, like our contemporary time. And we needed something that would be like, go fly under the radar and be subtle enough that you like kind of like feel like it's a real place. But then you just notice these different stylistic elements subconsciously in a way. So for example, like in our background, like we don't just use a thin black line. We actually, have a separate processing where we try to make it look like an old Xerox, like that, that has smudges on it that make it have the feel of a redacted document. We have like different things like light aberration to try and get the feel of like old conspiracy footage, and just like slight aging of certain elements that I think you don't like pick up on it consciously, but I'm surprised that you noticed that. I guess you have a really nice TV because I haven't seen it on mine.
I hope you saw it at some stage.
Oh, I did. Yes. No, of course. I see it when we go to like the mix stage and all that stuff.
Yeah, they've betrayed you by drawing in things in the background, But and you're totally right. Like what you said, it's not something I consciously picked up on until way later in the show, and I think it was in the supervillain's lair where I was like, the boxes are drawn on the wall, and then my brain was like trying to pick out things. You got me. You got me. Yeah.
Got him.
and in mind, like there's a lot to keep track of really then as well. There's not only all the kind of secrets and conspiracies that you're revealing throughout the show, but there's also obviously the storyline between Reagan and everyone in the office and her dad as well and her mom. Like, how do you uphold that continuity, because there is so much to just keep track of in this parallel world that you've created?
It is a challenge, yes, and we have all this stuff written down somewhere. And,
redacted, yeah.
We have it all written down somewhere, I'm sure. I think like it's certainly something that I anticipate needing to be super thorough about if there are future seasons. But this show has been kicking around in my brain for 6 years now.
Yeah.
So I haven't yet really needed to refer to like like a lore document so far. But I cannot discount that because, at some point you're like, oh, I have so much information and past versions and things in my head, like I can't even keep it straight.
Yeah. But and again, like it's like we talk about leadership, because you're not the only person working on the show. If it was just you, that's fine. You've got it all in your head. But how then do you trickle that information down through to everyone? Especially, and it's super thorough. Like there's moments where you hadn't even talked about Atlantis, but it's painted on the world. That kind of thing. So like the world building is already there.
Well, before we, got into strictly breaking episodes and outlines, like we did brainstorms and kind of like discuss like who is in this world, like what groups are there, like what is our take on each of these groups, and what do they want. I think like stories function best when the relationships between characters and institutions and what they're after, and that's really the key to keeping all that stuff organized. Because like if you know how the Atlanteans relate to your main character, then you don't really need to refer much to that lore document, because like it's kind of like inherent in the conflict.
Yeah,
But
excellent.
yeah, a lot of discussion, a lot of brainstorming, and at some point we did type up a document that had all this stuff in it. But I like to keep that as like a loose guide. You know, it's
Yeah,
always
totally.
subject to change, and if a better idea comes along, we'll figure out how to make it work.
Yeah.
Things
That-
evolve naturally.
Yes, yes, I like that. And let's talk about then, the relationships of the main characters then, specifically Reagan and Rand, the dad. And I'm not going to talk about how that evolves over the course of the show, but like where when you sat and you had this churning in this stew brain for 6 years, like what were the initial threads of that? Was it always going to be kind of an only child, or did she ever have siblings? Was it always going to be a dysfunctional kind of family?
Yeah, they say write what you know. So yeah, I never really imagined siblings for her, and for Reagan, and the kind of family dynamic was, it's not directly my family. It's also different kinds of like things that I was feeling in the zeitgeist, like the clash in perspective between the older generation and millennials, and the relationship to work-life balance, and like the kind of like things that we'd been fed about work hard, achieve a lot, and all this stuff, and that kind of being a little bit of propaganda of a capitalist system that I think people are getting aware of now. So that stuff kind of wrapped up with Rand is kind of like Reagan's potential dark future. Like they're actually really similar. They're both, they can both be kind of swept up in their own bullshit, if you will. But Reagan is a little bit more self-aware, and she knows that she needs to grow. And Rand is completely like full on maniacal narcissist. So
Yeah.
there's like a world in which she says, I'm right, and she usually thinks she's right, and then takes that as a cue to never change or try to progress as a person. And if she follows that road, she becomes her father. And then there's another road that she could take where she could accept that she has flaws and needs to learn to grow, and hopefully becomes a little bit more well-rounded.
Yeah. Or she could marry herself.
Yeah.
It's interesting you talk about the kind of generational divide, and it's something that popped into my head just there. Like, where do you think the voice of the millennial is, like, at the moment? Do you think it still has the same effect it did 10 years ago, or do you think it's kind of waning?
The millennial voice, I guess I could ask you more about what you mean exactly. But
God damn, you're doing it again. Too good at this, yeah. I mean more about, generationally speaking, every generation has a kind of a very strong voice between a certain period of time. And I'm curious now that obviously we millennials, I think you and me are very similar in age. We're obviously getting on, we're moving on, but you're contributing your voice to society now, and you're influencing younger generations. But do you feel that that voice is still currently up to date with where the world is?
Relevant?
Yeah, is it relevant? This is a bad question.
Well, I
but
feel like it is interesting, like millennials, quote unquote, if you buy into the whole marketing thing of generations, are reaching a maturity and place in their lives where they're not the young muckrakers anymore necessarily. There's all those TikToks, Gen Z TikToks making fun of like millennials having side parts and wearing skinny jeans and all this stuff. Like, but I think that millennials are still at the spearhead of maybe like, the next in line after the previous generation. So, in terms of shaping the world beyond the point of being a young person critiquing everything, like that bears, I think that's like happening soon. And we're going to see if any of us can do anything to make the world a better place, because for a long time we've been in the other position where it's like, hey, how did we get handed this mess? It's not our fault. And now soon we'll get the chance to, have it be our fault for the next generation.
I like that. So this is Netflix's first, one of the first, in-house studio productions out of the gate, basically. Obviously, congratulations. It's a big, big spear to wield. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I was so thrilled and honored to be like, oh wow, they had confidence in this project and loved the material, and so I guess this is the first show that they're making in-house, and so that was incredible. And then there's the funny pragmatic side of it, which is for the first 6 months of the production, I worked in a warehouse as the studio was kind of being built up around me. And so I'd be like, I think someone might have peed in that back stairwell. Is anyone going to clean that up? And they'd be like, right, facilities. We need facilities.
We need to hire a janitor. Yeah. And a toilet. Yeah.
Really being built while the car was driving. All this infrastructure was new and being put into place at the same time. So, obviously there was some trials in that regard, as there obviously would be. But still, I think that the excitement of a new studio also feels like it galvanizes people to be like, we can do anything, which is an exciting period to be a part of.
And that is cool, but also at the same time, what were the kind of limitations that set in? What didn't make it into the show?
There wasn't a ton that I felt like there was you develop all of these backstories and relationships and connections between everyone in the show as just part of the homework of making it feel like a real world. And I wish that I could explore all the different side characters and the different departments that we didn't get to see. Because, in shorter orders, it's you got 10, you got 8. You have to really pick and choose what you're going to put on screen. It's not like the old days where you get okay, 22 episodes and we're going to bang them out all in one season, and you can just have the episode where all they do is go to Friendly's and their car breaks down, and then they just, it's just you need to make every episode count. So I we have all this material that didn't quite fit in that would be really fun to explore at some point.
I mean, these are 25-minute episodes, really, aren't they? To the T most of the time. Really bang on. Once it hits 25, the black screen drops and the credits roll,
Yeah, I mean, we technically don't have to, but I think that for the health of storytelling in the show, it is good to keep things tighter, because it really makes you focus in on what's important and what is actually driving the momentum of the episode. And even if we could do 27, 28-minute episodes, and the pilot was longer, but I think that rhythmically it's best to try and keep them around 25 and a little tighter, so that it keeps moving, and that audiences don't lose the thread, because as you say, the dialogue and the jokes are pretty fast paced, so sometimes it can be a fire hose of information, and you got to make sure that people can still follow the breadcrumbs.
One thing that I really, really, truly loved about the show is the opening kind of title sequence. That is so incredible. It really reminds me of back into 2000s, Batman Beyond or Men in Black. But what was the process of making that? Because that really interests me. There's a lot thrown in there as well.
Yeah, of course. Well, what I wanted for the main title of this show is something that would draw you into the world. A lot of sitcoms, they introduce you to the characters, but because this is a high concept show, you kind of need the initial buy-in of what the hell is a conspiracy company.
Yeah.
And so the feeling that all of that evokes of like power and darkness and hidden layers and like energy, that was what I was kind of going for. So early on, like I found this song that kind of had that going for it, where it still felt fun and exciting, but had a little darkness and driving energy to it. And then, you know, I was like looking for inspiration in a variety of places. I cut together like a vibe reel, if you will. And then we partnered with CRCR in France, and they produced that for us. And they were just so excited about the content of the show, really interested in conspiracy theories. And they and like the motion of it, like kind of sucking you in, drawing you in, like always like moving forward, feels a little bit like a rabbit hole. So that was kind of the aesthetic. And then they also like contributed many like hidden little Easter eggs throughout the entire thing. And I think it just came out. I love it. It's like I get jazzed when it comes on.
Yeah, it's no offense to the rest of the show, but it's one of the best parts. Like it's so addictive, you know. I have to listen to it. I have to watch it. Like the first time I was totally blown away by it. I was like, whoa, that's so different. That's so cool. It really challenges the kind of skip intro button that pops up.
That was our goal.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, they won't skip this.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, on my Netflix, the show is tagged as quirky, witty, and irreverent, but I misread it as irrelevant first time around. I said, wow, they're really cracking down on this deep state stuff so quickly.
Oh my God.
I know you were talking about the company that animated the show. These, from my eye, they look like rigged 2D characters primarily.
Yes, it's Harmony.
In Harmony, cool. But there's also a good lot of flair in there. Like there's a lot of things that kind of must break the rig to achieve. You know, you said that was all done totally in France, was it?
Oh no, the main title was done in France, but the show itself animated in Canada, in Ottawa, by Jamfilm.
Like, how far did you push those rigs to get some of those stuff?
Well, I've personally opened up their Harmony files, and I can tell you their rigs are really complicated. There's like a node for like every single eyelash. Like it's like really like detailed. And I think like they were always capable of executing whatever it is that we wanted. It was just about like figuring out, you know, how stylized do we want the motion? You know, like how far do we want to push the expressions and posing? And like it's kind of a hard question to answer, because much like the rest of the content of the show is like grounded, relatable character moments, and then the weirdest, craziest, outlandish stuff as the kind of table setting for it. So you kind of need designs and rigs that can go there when you need to hit that hard, the wacky stylization. And then you also need rigs that can really sell nuanced emotion. We really hit our stride much more quickly than I assumed. I was like, oh my God, look at this. They're really pushing it. Episode 3, this is so amazing. Like I thought this was going to be so much harder. But like they love the show so much, and we have a very good relationship where I feel like they're, you know, I don't ever get to see them, but like they're my crew, you know.
Yes, of course.
So they've done such a fantastic job.
Can you talk a bit about the style then of the aesthetic of the characters then? Because I've heard a lot of people compare it to shows like Rick and Morty, or that kind of adult animation look. Like, what do you kind of say to that?
Well, I mean, people, I think, I'm not sure exactly what it is that they're hoping for, if they're looking for like a hand-drawn line or like, you know, like indie French cartoons or something. But, you know, I think everyone's entitled to their opinion. Like we made choices that I think help sell the world and the jokes, and also allow for all the range of acting that you could want. And I think like I'm curious to see what they think when they actually watch the show, because I think they're gonna love it.
Hell yeah. One thing I did want to ask as well was, I know Alex was the executive producer on this, but I know Mike Hollingsworth popped in there a couple of times. Like, that must have been really cool. What kind of unique, different way of working, what qualities did they both bring to the table?
Yeah, so Alex kind of like he was like my sounding board in development and writing stuff. I'd be like, help me, I've never done a voice record before. I don't know what to do. You got to, how do I like react in this situation? I just like constant panicky phone calls. Mike was like on the show more full time, and so like, you know, with the waterfall schedule, what it is, like you actually physically can't do everything yourself. Like it would destroy you. And when he came on, he was like, how have you been doing all of this by yourself so far? Like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm not okay. And so Mike was great. He would sit in editorial, and he would, you know, put together the first passes of the animatics and like, you know, figure out how exactly how are we gonna like take this to the next level, and pitch ideas. And so you kind of have to like be able to have like a, you know, someone manning each little pot as it cooks. And you got 20 pots going at the same time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not okay. I think someone peed in the corner. And it might have been me. I'm not sure anymore.
Possibly me. Yeah.
Shion, thank you so much.
So lovely to talk.
You too. And listen, all the best success. I loved it.
Thank you.
Goodbye.